and he piled upon the whale's white hump the sum of all the rage and hate felt by his whole race. If his chest had been a cannon, he would have shot his heart upon it.
What?
Moby Dick.
Perhaps I could use this as an excuse to go to those far-off planets with little polka-dotted people if necessary, and be able to talk about love, war, nature, God, sex, all those things that go to make up the excitement of the human condition.
I'm Captain James Kirk.
Spock.
Your move, Captain.
Jim Kirk of the Enterprise.
What's going on?
I'm James Kirk. These people are my friends and my shipmates. Leave my crew alone.
Out of the question.
How about that?
James Kirk.
It fits like a glove, Captain.
Oh, the bonehead ideas.
Gentlemen, I'm Captain James Kirk. Get out of my chair. Get out of it now.
My greetings and felicitations, Captain. So good of you and your officers to, drop in. Absolutely smashing.
Peldor Joy, everyone, and welcome to Humanist Trek. It's a Star Trek podcast about the humanism in Star Trek. I'm Sarah Ray.
And I'm Allie Ashmead.
And I'm not really sure what to talk about at the top of this show. Last week, I would have been camping with the family. We're podcast magic opening here. Assuming all the pieces fell into place, there's a possibility it may not. As you're listening to this episode, I should be volunteering at Camp Quest.
Yay, cool.
So the first week got canceled. I think we may have talked about it on the show. But the first week, unfortunately, got canceled. So this is the second week. And hopefully it didn't get canceled, too. That's where I should be this week.
I have no idea No idea.
Well, let's get into this week's episode then. It's Star Trek, the original series. I have no segue this week. It's Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 14, Wolf in the Fold.
Sir, contact with an object. It's moving toward us. No visual contact yet.
Deflectors, full intensity.
Mr. Sulu, yes, Captain. Anything on your scanners?
It's coming at light speed.
Collision course. Visual contact.
Anything, over?
All wavelengths dominated by ionization effects, sir.
All engines full stop.
Hey, remember that Middle Eastern looking place the booty heads miraged up for Pike, where Vina was an Orion slave girl doing some belly dancing?
Was that the
We're
same
back! I don't know if it was or not, but I want it to
Probably.
be because it looked like it. Yeah.
Yep. It was like very Moroccan, Middle Eastern.
Yeah. And a woman is belly dancing, finger symbols and everything. And people are all scattered around the room, lounging on floor pillows and such. And the camera pans over to Kirk, McCoy, and Scotty at a table near the back. I don't know how I feel about this scene. These guys are all just like horny fucking dogs foaming at the mouth over this woman. Scotty, worst of all.
Right? He's looking, grinning like a fool.
He's damn near jacking it right there at the table.
I know. I'm like, oh, uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was awkward. This is the like locker room boys talk shit that they talk about, you know?
Yep. Scotty's like, I think I'm going to like Argelius. Because doesn't he usually, he doesn't even like taking shore leave normally.
Right.
He likes to stay on the ship.
Yeah, and if he has to go, he'll read a technical manual while he's on vacation. So this is Argelius, what McCoy calls a completely hedonistic society. They think very highly of their pleasure, Kirk says. And he's invited this dancing woman to join them at their table. And Scotty's like, oh, you're the best captain ever. Always thinking of his men. Do you think Kirk treated Uhura, Chapel, and Rand to a night at the sausage party house? I don't think so.
There was never seemed like there was any pleasure places for women. It was always everything for the men.
Women don't have pleasure, remember? It's 1968 or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right.
So this woman is dancing, comes up to their table, and shakes her bits next to Scotty. And that really winds him up. And during this, we get a cutaway to a man sitting on the floor at the table nearby.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite sure what his deal is yet.
But he looks mad.
Mm-hmm. She goes back to the stage and finishes her dance, and Scotty starts pounding on the table. And he's the only one because the local custom is to flicker the lights on the table in lieu of applause. But Scotty's like, I'm too horny to care about local customs.
He continues to bang on the table.
He says, nobody needs to tell an old Aberdeen pub crawler how to applaud. And he bangs on the table some more. As this woman comes to sit with the Starfleets, the man at the next table gets up and storms off. So he's definitely mad about something. And then we get a cut to another man who looks like he might be holding a sword or something. I couldn't make out what he was holding. But later we learn he's one of the musicians. And he gets up too.
I didn't notice him. I did not notice him.
Yeah.
Scotty's trying to chat up the belly dancer, and he says, "'Tis a foggy night tonight, but I doubt if anyone's ever told you of the marvelous fogs we have in Aberdeen." Kara is her name, the belly dancer. She's like, "I'm dying to learn.
Please teach me."
Scotty's like, "Well, let me show you."
Oh my.
Like, okay, walking in the fog doesn't seem that romantic, but that's
okay.
Something sounds a little creepy to me, but whatever.
As they leave, Kirk sort of sighs contentedly and says, "My work is never done." And McCoy's like, "More like my work. This is prescription stuff. Boy, if you can get a Navy crew laid, well, they'll do just about anything." Boy.
Something about the explosion that threw Scotty against the bulkhead was caused by a woman, so they felt like he was like had an aversion to women or something.
Yeah, this kind of came out of nowhere. There's a little bit of backstory that I thought it was weak.
It was misplaced, didn't belong there.
Yeah, so Scotty apparently had an injury that we don't know anything about. It's just mentioned in this episode. Something exploded. He hit his head. And the accident
was caused by a
woman. So now he hates women. What?
What?
So weak.
Yeah.
Anyway, he seems to be losing that quickly on this planet. And McCoy's like, well, this will get him over his resentment of women. But when you make him leave this place, he's going to resent you instead, Jim. And Kirk's like, well, mission accomplished, I guess. Hey, I know this titty bar across town. And McCoy's like, I know the place. Let's go.
Oh, man.
This whole episode.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Scotty and this couple are meandering in the fog, and Kirk is figuring out which way to go, which way to get to the titty bar. And they hear a scream. And so they run towards the scream, and they find the Tara, the dancer, is, well, as McCoy put it, she's dead, Jim.
Oh my God! They've killed
Kara.
You bastards!
Stabbed a bunch of times. And then standing by a wall, and he's like kind of staring off into space, is Mr. Scotty with a knife in his hand.
Captain's log, Scotty's a murder suspect, and the chief city administrator, Mr. Hengist, is in charge of the investigation. Now, Hengist is played by John Fiedler. It's Piglet.
My friends need me. Hang on.
What?
This actor he's a real that guy. He was one of these like guest star character actors that did one episode of every TV show produced in the golden age of television. You know him from like The Odd Couple, the Bob Newhart show, and of course the voice of Piglet in every Winnie the Pooh movie, TV show, video game.
I didn't know that. I didn't know he was. He did look familiar. But
I had to look it up because he started talking, and I was like, "Oh my God, I know this guy from. Where do I know this guy from?" He has a voice that just. I know he's a real that guy, and yeah, he was the voice of Piglet right up into his death in 2005 too. Like he died in 2005, and there are 4 Piglet credits in 2005.
Wow.
Yeah, just an iconic dude. Anyway, Piglet is our detective for this episode of CSI Argelius 2.
Hengist, he says that Argelius is the last planet in the galaxy where he'd expect a murder to happen.
We learn that Piglet is not a native of this planet because these Argelians hire administrative officers from off-world because Argelians are just too busy pleasuring to do any work. Piglet tries to question Scotty. He holds the knife, which has now been cleaned, and he asks Scotty, are you sure you've never seen this knife before? But Scotty just doesn't remember. And this memory lapse is going to be a problem because all he remembers is walking in the fog with her. And for some reason, he was up ahead of her. He was like, I was trying to lead the way or something.
But how
which is
far
weird.
ahead?
Yeah. He heard a scream, started to turn around, and then he doesn't remember anything that happened after that. Kirk's like, Scotty, you've got to remember. As if sternly saying those words is going to suddenly snap him out of it.
Jim and McCoy go off and talk a little bit behind his back. And he's like, well, if he says he can't remember, he probably doesn't. You know, Scotty, you know, he's always truthful.
Yeah. And besides, he's suffering from a severe concussion.
Kirk's like, yeah, but I know a murder's been committed. And it doesn't make any difference what he thinks at this point.
And there's a bigger implication that Kirk's worried about, too. When a Starfleet is on an alien planet and, I don't know, accidentally falls into a bed of flowers marked with big white PVC pipes, the laws of the planet prevail. That was an episode of Next Gen.
Oh.
When Wesley falls into the flowers and they're going to kill him.
Oh, that one. I love that episode. Anyway.
So Kirk's hands are tied diplomatically. They're going to have to go along with whatever the way this culture does things. And Piglet's like, this doesn't look good for your engineer. And Kirk quickly points out that there were a lot of other people in the bar, and a few of them left just before Scotty did. So there should be some other suspects here. Piglet's already on it. Those people are being located and questioned. And Kirk asks what the law on this planet is. And from the background steps Jairus, the high to ear or whatever. And she, who is his wife, Sibo. And he says, the law of Argelius is love.
Jairus is dressed in like these long robes. It looks like some kind of priest thing. And he totally has preacher hair. He has televangelist hair.
Oh,
Did you notice?
No, I didn't make that connection, but you're right. And he comes in and he looks at Scotty and he's like, well, he didn't look like a killer. But it's been so long since they've had crime like that on the planet. So he says they're going to return to an ancient method of obtaining truth used long before their Great Awakening 200 years ago.
McCoy seems to be familiar with this method, and it's called the Argelian empathic contact. And Jairus is surprised that he knows about it, and Kirk knows about it too. And he's like, yeah, we've heard of it and assumed it was a lost art.
McCoy's like, yeah, we've got this pointy-eared, green-blooded goblin that does something like that too.
Yeah, he can touch your face.
He does it. Yeah, he'll finger you.
But so Jairus is like, well, my wife is a descendant of the ancient priestesses of our land, so she's got that ancestral gift. And so he's like, come one, come all, murderers and all, come to my house, basically. It invites all of them to his house.
And Piglet's like, do you think that's a good idea? We should probably handle this through my office and in an official manner. And Jairus is like, it will be handled officially. I'm the highest official. At Jairus' house, Kirk kind of makes a statement that I felt called into question these empathic abilities. He says, depending on she who is your wife's empathic abilities is all very well, but there's only one way we can find out what it is Mr. Scott cannot remember. This is the like, hey, let's do science instead, or at least in addition to your Reiki and crystal nonsense or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great argument, and I'm glad they make this several times in this episode.
What Kirk has in mind is something called a psycho-tricorder that they can bring down from the ship, since they won't let them go back to their ship at the moment. So they're going to try, I guess, both ways, the empath way and then the psycho-tricorder way.
We're supposed to believe they've had a special tricorder that can, read the memories of the past 24 hours and project it on the wall or something? Like, how many times would this gizmo have come in handy in the past season and a half?
Well, they only used it once, and they did use it once. Did you know that?
No.
I will get to that.
Okay. Jairus grants them use of a small chamber one floor down to use their lie detector quarter. He's also worried about the implications of this murder on his people. Fox News is running a 24-hour socialist engineer murders sexy woman ticker, and people are starting to freak out, so much so that they might have to close down off-world traffic. So Jarrus is pouring out drinks. Piglet suggests they should expedite the roundup of the other people who were at the bar that night. And Jarrus agrees. Anyone with any connection to the murder should be present at the ceremony. As Piglet goes to leave, a pretty blonde science officer beams in and introduces herself as Lieutenant Karen Tracy.
Did you notice that Piglet gave her a look before he walked out the door?
Yeah, he's like stopped and turned back to her. Yeah, that was weird.
I don't know if it meant anything, but...
Jarrus escorts her to the small room to set up her memory scanner. Kirk reminds Scotty to give Tracy full cooperation, and Jarrus, Tracy, and Scotty leave. That gives Kirk and McCoy a little privacy to talk. Perhaps it was that blow to the head that changed Scotty's behavior patterns. Like maybe he did kill her. And as for the memory loss, McCoy suggests it could be hysterical amnesia. He says when a man feels guilty about something too terrible to remember, he blots it out of his conscious memory. If that's true, then why does my brain love to go back to like all the embarrassing, like terrible moments of my youth and replay those over and over and over again when I'm trying to get to sleep?
Because McCoy is wrong.
Right.
Is why. So Jarrus comes back and then he crosses the room, and then out of another room comes his wife. He takes her hand and asks, like, "Are you ready, SIBO?" And she's like, "I'm ready. Can I have the knife, please?"
Yeah, see, in addition to Reiki and crystals, she can also receive impressions from inanimate objects.
Yeah. So suddenly, they don't have the knife. Like, where the fuck did the knife go?
Now, I backed this up a couple of times to the point where Scotty leaves with Tracy and Jarrus.
Right.
And I didn't see anybody holding the knife.
No.
I went back and looked on purpose.
And they had placed it like on a table or something when they arrived.
Yeah.
And it was gone. And as if on cue, we hear a woman scream.
And the three men go running. Suspiciously, to me at least, SIBO does not. She just stands there. Yeah.
Didn't notice that.
That led me down a wrong path. We'll talk about that in a moment. They go down into the old dungeon playset that we've seen a few times before. We broke out the dungeon again. And there sits Scotty at a table, and he's like half out of it and on the floor with her dress all bloody and her ass hanging out. Don't know if you noticed that or not.
No, I saw the stab wounds on her back.
Is Lieutenant Tracy. Just like the other one, stabbed over and over again.
Oh my God! They've killed
Lieutenant Karen Tracy.
you bastards!
I'm going to pull up that clip. See, she got her booty hanging out.
Well, she had panties on. She had drawers on. So Jarrus decides to make Scotty a drink. It's a Argelian stimulant. It's supposed to hopefully snap him the fuck out of his cloudy head.
And it does. It works pretty quickly. He kind of sits up and starts talking to Lieutenant Tracy. It's clear that he has no idea what's happened again. And when Kirk explains that she's dead and Scotty starts recounting what he remembers, there's another big gap in his memory. He says he was sitting, she was taking readings, then he was sitting here. He just can't remember.
And McCoy's like, it's probably that head injury again. And Scotty's like, I've been trying, but he can't even believe that this is really happening to him.
They really lean on this head injury thing a lot. And I thought, if this head injury was that bad, why did they let him come down to the planet?
Right. He should be on medical observation or something. But were concussions just not
not a big deal, I guess. Back, I don't know. Anyway, I want to take a moment to shout out Jimmy Doohan because holy crap, he crushed this whole episode.
He always, and whenever he's like it has a main part in the story, he always does.
Yeah. The way he plays like the anguish over not being able to remember shit is just fantastic. Like I'm glad they gave him something this meaty to do.
Yeah. Yeah. He did crush it.
Kirk asks if there's another entrance to that chamber, and Jarrus says there is. There's a door that leads in from the garden, but it's been locked for years. But locks can be picked or phasered even. So he sends McCoy to check on it. As McCoy leaves, Piglet comes back in with Morla, the man who was sitting at the table next to the Starfleets that night, and Tark, one of the musicians. These are both men we saw cutaways to in the dance scene at the beginning, so there's already some suspicion around them for me.
Kirk informs Hengist, well, while you were gone, there's been another murder, and it's one of his crew this time. And Hengist is like,
Oh dear, this is so very terrifying.
he refers to the men that he brought in. He's like, my men picked you up near there. What were you doing? And that's Morla. He's like, I don't know anything about it. I didn't kill anyone. And Hengist asks, like, how was the girl killed? And Kirk says stabbed, just like Kara was, but there's no sign of the weapon.
No knife this time. And Piglet laments that he doesn't have the facilities for a proper investigation. But Kirk keeps playing detective. He says he recognizes Tark as the musician that played for the murdered girl, and Tark says she was his daughter. Danced since she was a little girl, and he demands they find the man that murdered her and punish him.
He didn't seem to me to be that bothered by the death of his daughter.
And that made him suspicious too.
Right.
There's a lot of false finger pointing in an episode like this, and I'm here for it.
I love a mystery.
Yeah.
The Scooby-Doo mystery.
And I went down the wrong road a couple of times, so I love it. I love it when they can pull that off. Morla is next. Kirk recognizes him as having left the bar just before Scotty and Kara did, and he says, I am Morla of Cantaba Street, Prefect. I was there. I have nothing to hide. Well, it turns out this guy was Kara's husband-to-be, but Tark says that he behaved disgracefully. He was jealous of her. And this raises suspicions on him because insert trope about the jealous boyfriend of a stripper here. And he admits to being jealous at seeing her go to the table with the Starfleets, and that's why he stormed out and went home. And Kirk says jealousy has often been a motive for murder.
And Jarrus is like, well, this is why emotion is so strongly disapproved of here. But Morla's like, I didn't kill her, and I couldn't have.
As a viewer, I would think that jealousy would cause him to assault Kirk and the gang, not his fiancée. And definitely not Lieutenant Tracy.
True.
So Morla was off the table for me at this point, like despite how much trouble they went to making him seem suspicious in the beginning.
Yeah, because I did think it was him. I immediately thought it was him just from that cutaway to him at the very first scene.
Yes.
Tark I didn't suspect at all.
No.
Even though I did find it odd about his lack of grief.
McCoy comes back and he's like, I don't know why you sent me to check that lock. I'm a doctor, not a locksmith. Missed opportunity for that one there.
I know.
It may have been picked. It may not. It would be hard to tell even with a tricorder. Kirk starts shooting questions again. He asks Morla if he can prove that he went directly home from the bar, and Piglet cuts him off. This is his investigation. He'll ask the questions. And Kirk says, like with some desperation and frustration in his voice, well, then get on with it, man. Jarrus reads this as a man desperately trying to save his friend and asks if he'd be so desperate to save Argelius as a spaceport for Starfleet.
This one I started suspecting Jarrus because that seemed to me to be a motive. Maybe they're killing to bring attention of Starfleet.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know.
But that's when I started suspecting Jarrus because he's so calm.
And Jarrus is like, look, basically just you have to follow our laws and customs or we'll close our borders to you. Kirk's like, well, yeah, I'm trying to save my friend if he's innocent. And where we come from, you're innocent until proven guilty. And Piglet's like, you know your guy was discovered over the body and later claimed to remember nothing. Again, I say, it doesn't look good for your friend.
Sibo comes in and she says, I am ready. So she's ready to do her
seance.
Ooh, witchy woman thing. She's meditated, so she's ready. So Jaris instructs everyone to sit down around this big table with this fire thing in the middle. And everyone sit and hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
Kirk requests that the room be sealed so no one can leave or enter during the ceremony. So Jaris flips some switches, and then we see the doors close one by one. Scotty speaks for all of us skeptics here. He says, Captain, you mean my neck is going to have to depend on some spooky mumbo jumbo? Before he can answer, his StarTAC rings, and he steps to the side of the room to speak with Spock, who has done some research on this Argelian empathic contact, and he thinks it's not scientifically sound, too. Spock suggests beaming up Scotty and using their computers to find the truth. But we've already established not only are these people proud, we're all under their jurisdiction here. And he tells Spock it's absolutely imperative that this matter be resolved according to their law. Is that clear? And if I'm Spock right now, I'm pulling every Argelian law book I can find, looking for loopholes and shit, right? And Spock would be the one to do it.
Yep.
Cross dissolve into the seance scene. Everyone's sitting around this pillar with a flame on top, and they're holding hands. And Sibo says, "Let us begin. Let the circle not be broken. Concentrate upon the flame which burns upon the altar of truth." And as she goes along, she gets more and more animated and frantic. Yes, there is something here. Something terrible. Yes, I'm getting a message from beyond. Your grandmother is in the room. And she starts talking about something terrible. I feel its presence, fear, anger, hatred. Anger feeds the flame. Evil here, monstrous, terrible evil. Hatred
of women.
Yeah, hatred of all that lives. Hatred of women, a hunger that never dies. I thought that was odd for sure.
She started talking about it's an ancient terror, and then it has a name, Baratus, Kesla, and Rajak. Then she starts yelling Rajak.
And the flame gets lower and lower the longer this goes on. And finally the flame is out and the whole room goes dark and we hear another scream.
Oh, shit.
When the lights come back up, Scotty is holding Sibo in his arms. And as he lets go of her and she flops into McCoy's lap, revealing a knife in her back, Scotty's hand is all covered in blood.
Oh my God! They've killed
Sibo.
you bastards!
God damn it, Scotty.
I don't know about you, but Sibo was a suspect for me up to this point. This was the wrong turn I made.
I didn't think of her as a suspect at all.
I thought maybe she was like using her mental powers to influence or control somebody. Like, or maybe she was controlling Scotty mentally, like, into doing these things. I was really confused. I really thought it was her.
It must be the strain of weed we're on, because I didn't even go that way.
That's funny.
Yeah, we had completely different suspects. But yeah, it wasn't. She didn't even cross my mind.
Wow, that's crazy. Kirk and McCoy argue a bit here. 3 murders. Scotty's the only possible suspect, but McCoy insists Scotty couldn't have done it. Again, they try to blame the concussion, but Scotty protests that. But he can't even remember whether he did it or not himself. And Piglet has seen enough now that he's convinced Scotty's guilty. And Kirk's like, guilty maybe, but not responsible. If we can prove he's insane. Well, that was a big jump.
At this point, I think Kirk thinks he did it,
Right?
But he didn't mean to do it. It's like, whatever, we can get him a lighter sentence or something.
Right?
Insanity, plead insanity. Jaris is like, please stop, don't stop arguing. How could any man do such monstrous things?
They've moved on, and he's still grieving the death of she who was his wife.
Right. Which, again, no emotion. I think maybe that's the Argelian way or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Even though they said the Argelian law is love, I'm not sure what that meant, because nobody seems sad when they lose their daughter or their wife.
No. The situation has changed enough now that Jaris is willing to consider moving the investigation to the Enterprise, use their computers to determine the truth. Jarrus is even willing to consider the possibility that Scotty may be killed without knowing it. And if the computers can determine that, he's in. He says, we'll go to your ship, and he who is guilty will face the ancient penalties, barbaric and horrible though they may be. The ancient penalty for murder was death by slow torture. That law has never changed. Well, it's good to know that there are other places than the South that have outdated, stupid laws that have been on the books since the 1780s that need to be changed.
Right. So they go back to the ship, and in the captain's log, Kirk says, they go back to the ship. Mr. Scott is in a technical state of arrest. Now, in the briefing room, we have seen this machine before.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember?
I remember Spock was on the stand. That's what I remember. I don't remember which episode that was.
I think it was
court-martial. Did we use it in court-martial?
Oh, maybe we did. Maybe they used it there. I know they used it in iMud. Remember?
Oh, yes.
Because
yeah,
the computer would say incorrect.
Yes.
When a Harry Fenton Harcourt, whatever his name is, gave his name.
Yes.
And she said incorrect.
Right.
So the computer could tell he was lying.
I was thinking the chair, not the computer. Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's the chair,
the chair
too,
with the little thing that you put your hand on that lights up. Yeah. Okay. Kirk's explanation of how this chair works was fun, though. Like, he gives us the tour of how the chair works. Now, each person will sit down in the chair, and you place your hand on this round thing here, and it'll light up, and it does a little biometric scan, reads your floppy disk. It was great. Scotty's first on the stand, and the computer verifies his identity and reports on his physical condition. It notes the head injury is healing, but there's still some peripheral abnormalities, but not sufficient enough to account for periods of functional amnesia. So the whole room, audibly, loudly gasps at this. Scotty says that he's not lying. He doesn't remember a thing about the first two murders, and the computer states that was accurate. No physiological changes.
He's telling the truth.
Yeah. Scotty says he didn't black out, though, when she who was Jarrus's wife was killed, and explains that they were holding hands, but when the lights went out, the circle was broken. Remember, she said, let the circle not be broken. She screamed, and Scotty tried to go toward her to help her, but something was in his way. He says it was cold, like a stinking draft out of a slaughterhouse.
What?
That's a weird analogy, but all right. But whatever it wasn't really there. It was there, but it wasn't there. And he starts to trail off, and he's not able to really find the words.
So Kirk asks the computer, what's the accuracy? And the computer basically says no physiological changes, which means Scotty is telling the truth.
Yeah. Kirk's like, okay, brass tacks, no more fucking around. Scotty, did you kill Sibo? And Scotty says, no, that I'm sure of. And Piglet's like, but that's what he's been saying all along. This changes nothing. So Kirk decides to demonstrate what the computer would do if a lie was detected. And he asks Scotty, lie to me. How old are you? And Scotty says, 22, sir. And the camera cuts over to Maury, who opens the envelope, and he says, in the case of Mr. Scott's age,
the lie detector determined that was a lie.
The computer goes bonkers here. Inaccurate. So that demonstrates, what should have happened if Scotty was lying about not remembering things.
Or killing Sibo.
Right. He asked Scotty, after the lights went out, who was holding your hand? Morla on one side and Kirk on the other. And Morla protests this. With a room that small and the lights were out, any one of them could have had the time to kill her.
But Hingis pipes up and he's like, but let me remind you that we found Mr. Scott holding her in his arms and the knife still. To Jarrus, he's like, I'm sorry, but I have to, relive this of how your wife was killed. Jarrus is like, no expression. The knife was still in her back with blood on his hands. And Kirk says, the verifiers showed that he was telling the truth when he said he didn't kill her. So.
And Piglet keeps redirecting over and over again back to this, but Scotty's the obvious suspect here, right?
Yeah.
What about the other two murders? Kirk asks the questions directly, and each time Scotty says, I don't remember. And the computer verifies these are also accurate accounts. Piglet's starting to think this is a waste of time.
And Kirk is like, well, after we finish up here in the lie detector room, we'll try the psycho tricorder analysis of Scott's memory, which we were trying to do in the first place. And this will give us a complete record. And he asked Piglet if that would satisfy him. And Piglet's like, well, if you can convince me that the machine is incapable of error, and if it shows he did not kill the woman.
And I thought they were going to make more of this. The unreliability of computers, that computers do make errors sometimes.
Yeah.
Hashtag blue screen of death.
Yeah, but they didn't.
No, they didn't. Kirk says, you can step down, Mr. Scott, if there are no objections. And Piglet says, I object to this entire proceeding.
But Jarvis kind of pulls rank here again. We're here on my authority, so you will cooperate.
But he does reserve the right to make the final decision. So Morla takes the stand next. And when he sits down, he doesn't make eye contact. He's like looking down at the ground, which is a very guilty physical stance to take.
Mm-hmm. Very, very guilty lying body language.
Yeah. And when he was asked, where were you at 8 p.m. on Thursday the 18th? He says, yeah, I'm not sure. I was probably walking home, though. And I was real angry. And Spock's like, well, were you angry enough to do some violence? And Morla says, I've never done violence in my life. I don't even think I could. You've got to believe me. I wouldn't kill her. I couldn't. I loved her. And she loved me. And at that, Tark jumps out of his chair and yells, that's not true. She didn't love him. She told me. He was jealous. They fought constantly. And the crowd gets to their feet and they start chanting, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. And Jerry's like,
all right, well, here he is. Here's Ramon.
So then Kirk asks Morla point blank, did you kill Lieutenant Tracy? And he says, no. Did you kill Sibo? He says, no. And then Kirk asks the computer to verify, and the computer does say that the relaying is accurate, although there's some statements subjective, which I'm not sure what that meant. Oh, maybe it was because of the fact that
he was talking about he loved her and she loved
right.
me and that stuff. Yeah, that might have been.
So that was subjective. Like he thought she loved him. So
Kirk walks over and turns off the lie detector computer, and he goes over to Spock, and he's like, maybe we've gone about this the wrong way, Spock. As crazy as I think it is, let's start with the idea that Sibo was able to sense things. Mm-hmm. And Spock's like, you think it's crazy, but it's well documented that some Argelian women have this ability. Do you think Vulcan mind melds are crazy mumbo jumbo too?
I'm really surprised that they didn't try that.
Yeah, right?
Like they had the...
That should have been the first thing they went to. Spock, let me just stick my fingers into his brain.
Let me just finger him. Do the Vulcan fingering. And I mean, they've got the perfect lie detector test.
Yeah.
He could have just beamed down to the planet, but...
So Kirk and the gang start recounting some of the stuff Sibo said during the seance. Monstrous evil, ancient terror, devours all life and light. But she also said some words they didn't recognize. Rejak, Baratus, Kesla. So Spock feeds these words into the computer. Rejak first. And there's no hits in the linguistic database, but there are hits in the Encyclopedia Britannica Volume J under Jack the Ripper. And this was the point in the episode that I was like, oh, really? Okay.
And was this what this was about? This was a little bit disappointing.
Yeah.
They could have done something better.
I enjoyed that when we talked at the top. I wanted to hate this episode. The premise and the way they went about it, I liked. It's this part, this Jack the Ripper bit that I was like, it may make it just any old mass murderer that is not based in reality, right? Make it a made up character, and that would have been different for me, I think.
Yeah, but you can't assign this. Jack the Ripper was a real person,
mm-hmm.
and there was like they made it out to be he was actually supernatural. Everyone thought he was an actual real killer, but it turns out he was supernatural all along. So yeah, I did not appreciate this conclusion.
Everybody's like, well, that's impossible. Jack the Ripper's dead. He lived hundreds of years ago. And Jarrus reminds us that just before she died, she who was his wife said it was, quote, a hunger that never dies. So now Kirk is thinking maybe they're dealing with something that isn't human at all. Maybe Jack the Ripper wasn't even human. Sibo said whatever this thing is, it feeds on fear and death. And Spock thinks that's another fact in favor of this being non-human. But Piglet's still ready to call the whole thing off. Now we're talking about ghosts? Get out of here. Scotty's got blood on his hands.
Kirk is like, no, Mr. Piglet. No ghosts, possibly not human, but not ghosts. And then he asks Spock to check out some other possibilities. And Spock asks the computer for digest log recordings for the past 5 solar minutes, whatever that is. Correlate the hypothesis and compare with life forms registers. Could an entity within discussed limits exist in this galaxy? So the computer spits out a bunch of information that says the Drella of Alpha Carinae 5 derives nourishment from the emotion of love. There is sufficient precedence for existence of a creature, nature unknown, which could exist on emotion of fear. Then Spock asks the computer to extrapolate the most likely composition of such an entity. Most probable massive energy and highly cohesive electromagnetic field. And then Kirk asks the computer, could the described entity assume a physical form? Computer says affirmative. Precedent Miletus, cloud creature of Alpha Majoris 1. And Hingis is like, no, these are fairy tales, ghosts and goblins. Kirk's like, well, I've seen the Miletus myself, and it's gaseous in its natural state. So
the longer this goes on, the more annoyed Piglet gets.
Yeah, because it's now the computer is actually spitting some facts about this so-called ghost. Spock is like, well, maybe it's some kind of hypnotic screen which blinds all but the victim to the presence of the killer. And Jarrus is like, is that really possible? McCoy, of all people, he pipes up and it's like, that's extremely possible. There's many such examples that exist in nature. I'm like, really? Where?
Right.
Whatever.
Spock points out that Jack the Ripper killed all these women in the heart of the most populous city of old Earth and was never identified. So we have a creature that is without form, feeds on horror and fear, and must assume a physical shape to kill. And Spock touts some 60s sexism here.
Did not like this at all.
No, not at all. He says it probably preys on women because women are more easily and deeply terrified, generating more sheer horror than the male of the species. The fuck out of here, Spock.
Bullshit. Why would you say this, Spock? Because that's not necessarily true. It's very sexist.
Yeah. And they portrayed women that way on the show in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Kirk asked the computer for a list of other unsolved mass murders since Jack the Ripper, and the resulting list includes some other Earth killings, but also the Martian colonies, Alpha Eridani 2, and some other examples. And they were all women who were knifed to death, which, when plotted on a star chart, seemed to be in alignment, all places between Earth and Argelius. So perhaps this entity left Earth and has been moving across the galaxy like humans have. And all along, Piglet keeps jumping out of his chair, like, this is fantasy, this is bullshit, ghost stories.
And that's when I was like, okay, is it you? Because thou dost protest too much, you know? So Kirk asked about Tesla and Veratus, and the computer gave the name Kesla. This name was given to an unidentified mass murderer of women on planet Deneb 2. And then Veratus was given to an unidentified mass murderer of women on planet Rigel 4.
Which just happens to be where Piglet is from.
Zoinks! Right. And it happened a solar year ago. Dun, dun, dun.
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, piglets are from Rigel 4?
Is that another band or a shirt or t-shirt?
Piglets from Rigel 4? I like that.
So Kirk is like, hey, wait a minute. you come from Rigel 4. And Hank is like, well, a lot of people do. That's not a crime.
Yeah, he's real defensive.
So now Kirk is like, okay, why don't you take the stand and talk about defensive? He's like, nope, I will not.
Absolutely refuses. So KSM present the evidence, which is now mounting against Piglet. He's in charge of civil disturbances on the planet. That's a pretty safe place to be a killer. That's kind of like being a priest and touching kids.
Yeah.
Right after he left Jarrus's house, the knife went missing. He was unaccounted for when Tracy was killed. Yes, this would be a perfect place for an entity like this, and Spock gets the dubious honor of saying the episode title. He says, an entity which feeds on fear and terror would find a perfect hunting ground on Argelius, a planet without violence, where the inhabitants are as peaceful as sheep. The entity would be as a hungry wolf in the fold.
Hingis is like, well, I know something of the law, and you're just speculating right now. Objection, speculation. Kirk says, perhaps, Mr. Spock, but the murder weapon. So Spock refers to the computer and asks for a report and the analysis of Exhibit A, which is the murder weapon.
The computer recognizes like compositional details of the handle and the blade, and then it recognizes this detail on the handle that conforms to folk art produced by the hill people of the Argus River region on, you guessed it, Rigel 4.
Rigel 4. Booyah, guilty. Well, not yet. Kirk is like, okay, we got you now. Piglet is, what the hell? I was not expecting all this out of Piglet, but I don't know if you caught the back of his head. That was clearly a stuntman.
Yeah. Piglet tries to make a run for it.
Star Trek fight!
He knocks
lands
over Spock and Scotty.
He does this sideways kick or something. I was like, hey, that's cool. That's a Taekwondo move. But and it was clearly a stuntman. He kicks Kirk, and then Kirk punches him, and he falls to the floor. And just like that, he's dead.
Oh my God! They've killed Piglet! You bastards!
But Kirk is like, well, that's impossible. All I did was hit him, Then the lights start dimming, eerily. And then there's this voice that comes
creepy.
over. So silly. Laughter and those voice saying, Red Jack, Red Jack, Red Jack.
And laughing maniacally.
Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh.
So now we have a new problem. The entity is all up inside the computer, and the computer controls the ship.
So it apparently had left out of Piglet. and I have questions. I don't know if we should get it. I don't know if we should get into this now. Maybe we'll get into this later. But I have questions. Apparently it was in Hingis. I don't know if it was in him all along. I don't know.
Right.
But it left his body, and that's how he ended up dead.
After the break, the computer controls are locked out now, and on little 4-inch TV screens, some images of some swirling thing comes on.
I thought it looked like a paint pouring that I've done. Yeah. I was like, it looks like a paint pouring that I've done.
Yeah, was that supposed to look scary or something?
Back then, maybe.
Yo woman Tankris asks, what's going on? She seems frightened, of course, because, see, there you go. There's the women being scared. And Spock suggests that while the entity can control the life support systems and kill them all quickly, it will probably drag it out since it feeds on fear and terror. So Kirk makes a shipwide announcement for everybody to stay at their posts and remain calm. And he asks McCoy about a sedative. And I've got questions here. McCoy says he's got stuff that would tranquilize an active volcano.
What is it? Mushrooms? Cannabis? I'm like, what?
So the plan is to knock most of the crew out so they can't produce this fear response that the entity feeds on. Okay.
So Kirk is like, start distributing the drugs immediately.
I don't know. This MacGuffin didn't make a ton of sense to me. Kirk asks Spock, don't you have a compulsory scan unit built into the computer banks? A what? And it does a what? And we learn later, but this is for sure a an episode MacGuffin. This is a made-up thing for this episode. Apparently, they're going to try to feed the computer one of those unsolvable math problems so that the computer...
Make it blow up.
Yeah.
Logic problem.
Yes,
Cannot compute.
again.
Yeah, they've done this so many times.
But on their way to the bridge, a turbolift tries to close the doors and chop Spock in half. And then instead of going to the bridge, the turbolift goes into a free fall and they have to like switch it into manual control. Then an alarm goes off. Life support is malfunctioning.
They're fucked. Spock's like, we don't have much time, Captain. Kirk says, well, you said it yourself, Spock. It wants terror, not just death.
Finally, on the bridge, Sulu and some of the crew are working underneath a console, trying to get life support overrides back online. And we hear Piglet's spooky voice off camera talking about, Captain, you're wasting your time. You and all about your ship are about to die.
And Sulu is like, this is the first time I heard a malfunction threatening us. Always with the comic relief.
I love it when they do that. Spock gets life support back online for the short term, and a nurse enters with a tranquilizer. Kirk orders everyone, including her, be given the dose.
And everybody's kind of happy. They get the dose, and they're just like literally they've been smoking weed or something. It's like a real chill.
This is what I have questions about.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a tranquilizer? Because when I think tranquilizer, I think
go to sleep.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, a guy in a helicopter shooting a dart at a rhino or something, and the rhino drops over.
But they're being tranked, and then they can still do their job, like at the helm and engineering and stuff. Everybody on the ship has got to have it. So
yeah,
I think it's more of like a fear inhibitor, more like a...
They should have called it something like that then.
Agree.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Piglet's like, you cannot stop me now, Captain. It will do you no good. I control the circuits. You cannot silence me. While Spock works on the computer problem, Kirk tries to play chess with Piglet. He's like, look, if you destroy the ship, you destroy yourself. But Piglet says, I'm without ending. I have existed from the dawn of time, and I shall live beyond its end.
It says, I don't need a knife. You will die in horribly searing pain. Like, okay, well, how do you fight something like that?
Right.
Spock's like, well, it's attempting to generate terror, Captain. No shit, Spock.
It threatens to cut off the oxygen and suffocate them. And Sulu, who's been asking what the hell is going on, gets his injection and immediately goes all goofy. And he's like, whoever he is, he sure talks gloomy.
I love him. And Kirk's like, just man your post. And if any of the systems go out, switch to manual override. And above all, do not be afraid. And Sulu's like, well, with an armful of this stuff, I wouldn't be afraid of a supernova.
Spock asks the computer to compute to the last digit the value of pi. And Piglet goes bonkers. No, 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 no.
Not pi, no. That's what does it. Shoot, you could have done that to like Nomad or the other dude. What's the tall android dude's name? They would have cut out so much time.
So since there is no last digit of pi, the computer was just going to keep working on this problem until they tell it to stop. And Kirk says that the Argelians will be the first to panic, so they head back to the conference room, where McCoy is giving the last of the injections.
Do you notice that Jarvis was facing the other way the whole time?
So it doesn't take long for the entity to leave the computer, restoring total control, and the lights flicker off and on again. Now they have to figure out where the being went. McCoy says if the entity entered a tranquilized body, it might end up knitting, but nothing more violent than that. Everyone has had the shot now except KSM and Jarvis, who is suspiciously standing with his back to the camera.
Mm-hmm.
McCoy injects himself at Kirk's insistence, and then Kirk tells Jarvis to extend his arm. And Jarvis refuses. He spins around and grabs Kirk by the throat and starts talking about killing them all, making them suffer.
Bingo! We found him.
But Spock, our hero, swiftly slips up behind and takes him down with a Vulcan neck pinch.
So then I guess the entity jumped right back into Hingus's dead body, which I think he must have been dead a long time already.
Uh-huh.
Because otherwise Jarvis would have died. So I think Hingis was already dead, but he jumps back to life, snatches up the knife, and then he grabs Yeoman Tancrus, and he's like, I'll kill her, keep back.
He does that thing where he pulls her into his chest with his knife at her throat. McCoy, high as a kite, walks toward them saying, better be careful, you're going to hurt somebody with that thing. And Piglet shoves Tancrus at McCoy and then makes a lunge at Kirk. But Kirk easily flips him onto his back and Spock hits him with the sedative. Kirk carries Piglet like firefighter style down to the transporter room. Along the way, everybody's got the giggles. And so again, I was like, is this a sedative or happy gas? The fuck?
It's mushrooms. It's mushrooms, man. But we still hear the voice saying, you'll die.
Kill you all. Kirk orders the transporter set to full power with the widest angle of dispersion. And Chief Kyle's like, yo, I got this, Cap. But Kirk tells Spock to do it. And Spock shoves Kyle out of the way and beams Piglet out into space.
Oh my God! They've killed Piglet! You bastards!
Kyle's like, you didn't have to push me, Spock. I'd have gotten around to it.
He's annoyed without everybody being high, and he can't get high.
McCoy comes in for chair chat around the transporter console. Jarrus is all right, and they beamed Piglet into space, but dispersed the molecules. And McCoy's like, but it can't die, remember? So Spock explains that its consciousness may continue for some time, consisting of billions of separate bits of energy floating in space forever, but powerless.
So we don't know if they killed it or not.
Right. Maybe it'll die after all, but we don't know. And Kirk turns to Scotty and he's like, well, you seem quite happy. And Scotty laughs and says, well, why not? For a while there, I wasn't sure if I was innocent or guilty.
Kirk is like, how long is this tranquilizer going to last? McCoy's like, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours. I gave them all a pretty big shot. And yeah, Kirk's like, yeah, I can see that. Did Kirk not get shot at all?
No.
And so why didn't it jump into him?
Great question. Spock didn't either, did he?
No, I don't think. No, obviously
McCoy
not.
got
Come
himself,
on.
and then they tried to do Jarrus, but yeah, Spock and Kirk never got the shot.
Mm-mm.
Now I would expect that Kirk not to get the COVID shot, but Spock, I mean, come on.
Libtard. He's such a libtard with his logic and shit.
And we laugh at that, but I will say there are other ways to insult people without affixing the suffix "tard" to the word.
Yes.
And
I'm totally using that as a slam on people who use it.
Right. He says, well, Mr. Spock, for the next 5 or 6 hours, we are going to have the happiest crew in space. Of course, we won't get much work done. And Spock suggests that they came here for shore leave. Kirk might as well take advantage of the opportunity now. And Kirk's like, oh, yes. Hey, I know a bar where the women are so... And McCoy's like, oh, yeah, I know that place. And
There we go again.
Scotty's like, fuck yeah, titties.
Oh, my.
But Kirk's like, in your condition, don't be ridiculous. And he turns back to Spock and again says, Mr. Spock, this cafe has women that are so... And Spock gives him some stank eye.
Like, didn't they learn? They're still thinking with their dicks after everything that Scotty went through. With 3 women are dead, and they're just, let's go get some pussy.
Yes.
Come on, dude.
Exactly. So Kirk's like, yeah, I guess not. And he turns back to McCoy and Scotty, who are lit up with dopey smiles. And he goes, well, alone? Like, what fun is it going to the titty bar alone, I guess?
Can't talk his shit.
Not a person. I've never been to a titty bar. Sorry. Not my thing.
I have with a bunch of friends, like men and women. It's weird.
Yeah. But would you go alone? Nah.
No, because I don't want to see titties. I don't want to see dicks.
Allie's down at Magic Mike, right?
I've done Magic Mike and I went alone. So yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Kirk doesn't want to go alone. He wants his buddies. And our episode ends as Kirk walks out of the transporter room and gestures for Spock and McCoy to leave the room with him, while they and Mr. Kyle all have a good laugh.
Boy, I'm sure glad that's over with.
I'm happy the affair is over.
Me too.
A most annoying, emotional episode.
Yeah, but you know, I learned something today.
When dreams become more important than reality, you give up travel, building, creating.
One jealous god, if all this makes a god.
By sparing your helpless enemy, who surely would have destroyed you, you demonstrated the advanced trait of mercy.
Frankly, I was rather dismayed by your use of the term half-breed. You must admit, it is an unsophisticated expression.
I don't have any themes for this episode. This is another one of those, like, sometimes we just need to have a little fun.
Yeah.
Kind of episodes.
I love the whole mystery.
Yes, me too.
Part of it.
That
was fun.
I like that they led me down the wrong path. Right?
Because that's what they're supposed to do.
Exactly. Yeah, it worked. Yep,
it did. There was lots of misdirection.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Love that.
Me too.
Because it's misdirection and I know it's misdirection and I'm like, okay, do you mean to throw me in this direction or is he really,
I did make it a somewhat of an effort to look for an opportunity at the end of this episode to have Fred and the gang pull the mask off, and it was,
Piglet. It was Piglet all
the whole
along.
time. And Piglet's like, and I would have gotten away with it too. Oh God. Okay.
Yeah, this would. I don't have anything humanist. Don't kill people. I don't know.
Speaking of killing people, it's time to honor the dead.
It's dead, Jim.
We are assembled here today to pay final respects to our honored dead.
Kara was a belly dancer. Mr. Scott was grinning like a stud. They went for a walk in the fog, but she was stabbed to death and Scotty covered in blood. Lieutenant Karen Tracy brought the psycho tricorder, meant to jog Scotty's memory on Captain Kirk's order. Left alone with him in a room, she had started to set things up. Next thing you know, she was all cut up. Stebo was an Argelian empath. She had ways of learning the facts. The lights went out when she was doing her thing and ended up with a knife in her back. Hingis was a little weasel in a suit who came from Rigel 4. Red Jack had taken over his body and exited through his back door. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
Let's get right to business.
Fine, I'm authorized to pay an equitable price. Federation has invested a great deal of money in our training. They're about due for a small return.
Listen, we pay our percentages. We're entitled to a little service for our money, huh?
Is this the way your citizens do business? Their right of petition?
They pay their percentages and the boss takes care of them.
Is there anything else?
Well, there are a lot of great ways to support the show. One of the free ways to do that is to leave a review wherever you happen to listen to Humanist Trek. One of the best ways to support us, though, is to give us some of your hard-earned money by becoming a patron of the show. We want to thank all of our patrons, of course. We want to thank our founding admirals. A special thanks to Russell, Allie, Peter, and Sarah. Thank you, patrons. Patrons get early access to every episode. There's various merch and special patron-only content on the Patreon app. And of course, you always get the joy of knowing that you're keeping us on the air. So head down to patreon.com/humanisttrek and pledge as little as $3 a month. It really does go a long way to supporting the production of this show.
I assume you're loitering around here to learn what efficiency rating I plan to give your cadets.
Trainees, to the briefing room. Is that all you gotta say? What about my performance?
Aren't you dead?
I don't believe this was a fair test of my command abilities. There was no way to win.
There's no correct resolution. It's a test of character.
Now, what is that supposed to mean?
I am understandably curious.
May I ask you a question?
Who's been holding up the damn elevator?
Becca is back with us now for the exciting answer to last week's Starfleet Academy Cadet Challenge. Last time on Humanist Trek, you asked us,
in the late 1980s, what pop band sampled Scotty's line, "Let's go see," in a song?
Now, neither of us had a guess, so we know we got this one wrong.
Yeah. I hope it's something that I don't know, because then I won't feel so bad.
I'll be surprised if you know this.
Okay, who is it?
It's Information Society, and the song is called Walking Away.
Never heard of them.
Incorrect.
Let's go see.
Yeah.
I would never have known that.
No, I wouldn't have either.
That's the point.
And like I said, at the beginning, it says it's useless to resist. That sounded like something from Star Trek too.
It's very Borgy.
It is very Borgy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next week, we'll be finally watching one of my favorite episodes, Star Trek, the original series, season 2, episode 15, The Trouble with Tribbles. The Enterprise is overrun by furry creatures while tangling with Klingons and bureaucrats. Do we need to talk about this? I remember this episode.
I mostly remember it. I don't know how the triples got there. I just know the chaos that ensued when they started multiplying.
It was the trader guy. The trader guy brought one on board, and the space station was storing quattrotriticale, which is a grain that the tribbles ate and then multiplied. That's what I remember. Okay, what's our question for The Trouble with Tribbles?
This is a softball, guys. Mostly because I know this is Sarah's favorite episode, and I wasn't about to try to find anything obscure.
You do this, and I'm not going to know it. Yeah. Great.
Well, I think this is... Logically, you should be able to ascertain the answer to this. Think about it. Now, how high you are, I don't know.
That's the thing.
Anyway, the question is, during the bar fight in this episode, you might notice that while tables are broken, all of the chairs remained intact. Why?
The tables were broken, but the chairs remained intact?
Why?
And this is a softball?
Right? That's what I'm thinking. I don't fucking know.
Just think about it. Why wouldn't they break the chairs?
They needed someplace to sit? I don't know. Maybe they were nailed to the floor? I don't know.
Because there weren't any chairs. Dun, dun, dun. Why did they break? I don't fucking know. Broke the tables, not the chairs.
Spot could figure it out in like 2 seconds, I'm sure.
Why
his job is to make us feel stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not trying to. I thought this was an easy one.
What?
I really did. I thought this was like really easy to like figure out why they would film it that way.
Nah, no idea.
Oh man. Okay, well, I guess.
All right, 2 weeks in a row, we've got nothing. Tune in next week for the exciting conclusion. If you want to play along, you can share this episode using the hashtag Starfleet Challenge. And your guess, no cheating, no Googling. We'll pick our favorite. Next time on Humanist Trek, Star Trek, the original series, season 2, episode 15, The Trouble with Tribbles.
Live long and prosper.
Kapla.
Humanist Trek is available wherever you replicate your podcast. Follow us on all the social medias at Humanist Trek. Become a patron at patreon.com/humanisttrek. Open hailing frequencies to podcast@humanisttrek.com and visit our website, humanisttrek.com. Humanist Trek is a production of Sarah Austin Media.